So what we're going to do is, within context, we're going to climb Mount Everest this morning. We're going to climb Mount Everest in 17 minutes or less. And that's different than the 3 months that it actually takes, so we're going to go at a pretty good clip. The context is the 7 summits. So the highest peak, as David mentioned, the highest peak on each of the 7 continents. I set this as a goal in the early 90s, something that I wanted to accomplish. It took me 8 years to do it. And mountains provide a great metaphor. I've heard several of the speakers talking about measuring and assessing our challenges, life challenges, business challenges, and then something very tangible, climbing a mountain. But I think some of the preparation and the tenets that it takes to get ready and to actually execute and climb something like Mount Everest is applicable to our lives and certainly our businesses. I think of it as visualizing. We got to know what we're trying to accomplish before we can do it. Preparing, getting ready, getting yourself ready, getting your team ready, whether it's getting your products or services ready for market, getting a mountain ready, which we'll get into. Executing. At some point, all the planning, the preparation that you've done, you've got to actually, again, the metaphor applies, start walking. Start going one foot in front of the other to try to climb the mountain. A key, I was enjoying one of the talks about measuring, assess and measuring. Oftentimes we think when we hit a mountain to try to climb it, we think of the summit as success. It's not. The success can be measured or assessed as you go along. And we're going to see a couple of examples where there was true success achieved on Mount Everest without a summit. And then you finish. You try to get to the summit, or you finish whatever goal has changed along the way. So visualize. First of all, when I sought to do this, I had read a book called The 7 Summits, and I wanted to do the same thing. Highest peak on each of the 7 continents. Where are they? Mount Elbrus is in the Republic of Georgia, down on the Black Sea in the former Soviet Union. Highest peak in Europe. Highest peak in Africa is Kilimanjaro. Highest peak in North America is in Alaska, Denali or Mount McKinley. Highest peak in South America is Aconcagua, down in Chile. Highest peak in Antarctica is Mount Vinson. Far easier to climb this mountain than it is to get in or get out. We thought we'd be there 2 weeks and we were stuck there a month and a half. I put a picture of the plane. It takes that plane 6 miles to stop on the ice. Oftentimes the journey is far more frightening than the actual climb. If you're ever going to climb the 7 summits, start with Australia. You can surf in the morning, climb, have a couple of beers, and get a notch on the 7 summits. And if you're going to climb the 7 summits, I suggest you do what I did and save Everest for last, just in case you change your mind on this whole thing. So, prepare. So there's a vision. We got it. We know what we want to try to accomplish. Prepare. Goes without saying, preparing, you got to prepare yourself. You have to be fit before you get to somewhere like Everest. Your climbing resume would suggest that you're capable of being there. Team is incredibly important, as you all know. You start companies, you grow companies, and the teams that you select are often the most critical part of you achieving success. IMG Everest 2001, Phil and Sue Ursler, a married couple. Phil Ursler, one of the greatest American mountaineers in history, was the first person ever to climb Mount Everest up the North Face, first American. Sue would be trying to climb the 7 summits. She had climbed 6. I had climbed 6. This would be my first attempt. Greg Wilson is our lead climber. He had climbed Everest once up the North Face. We'll be going up the Southeast Ridge this morning. He had never made it. He had tried 5 times. Greg Wilson, or rather Charlie Peck, out of Denver, had attempted Everest once on the north side, first attempt on the Southeast Ridge. That's Ong Pasong. Ong Pasong is our Sirdar. He's the lead Sherpa. We'll have 10 Sherpas supporting us, climbing with us, preparing with us. That's his wife. He'll help us make decisions, so he's an incredibly important team member. As you prepare, you got to know where you're going. We'll start walking in a little place called Lukla at the bottom of the screen, and we'll hike about 60 miles to the base of Mount Everest at 17,700 feet. Talking about the preparation. At base camp, you can see the orange line. We have 3 things to do when we get there. We have to prepare our bodies, not the fitness, but the physiology. your body needs to change to be able to survive at 29,000 feet, or 22,000, 26,000. So what's happening is red blood cells will start to be created, additional red blood cells, not EPO or an Armstrong type thing, but the creation of real red blood cells. It would probably help. But so you gotta have that. The next thing you have to do is you gotta prepare the mountain. Prepare the mountain. That orange line is actually real. We will fix ropes to the mountain and then we'll clip into those ropes. So an interesting point is you climb Mount Everest by yourself. You're not roped to anyone, and yet you could never climb it without your teammates. Has anyone climbed Rainier or other mountains? Okay, great. So you know about anybody climbed Everest, so I make sure my fact checker's right. Okay. So we fix the mountain, that will be our lifeline. The third thing that we have to do is we have to prepare each of these camps. So base camp through camp 4 will be fully functional camps. Tents, sleeping bags, stoves, food, first aid, that type of thing. Oxygen up high. Once we've done all of that, we're ready to go. So that's the execute. Now it's time to start walking. It starts in Nepal, and this is the Monkey Temple. In Nepal, for all of you being entrepreneurs, this is a Lama. He reports to the Dalai Lama. The Sherpas will not climb, will not set out on the journey until they've been blessed, and they won't set out with anyone that hasn't been blessed. If you see in the forefront of the picture, there's some money. He won't bless you without getting paid. So it all works. Entrepreneurs in Nepal. Once blessed, we can now start on our trek. This would be spring, the most popular time to climb in the Himalaya. That's a suspension bridge for you engineers. Very frightening. Again, the journey is often tougher than the mountain. So as we move up, we're adjusting our bodies. They're now starting to change. We're at 12,000 feet in Namche Bazaar. We're now at 14,000 feet in the highest monastery in the world. 14,000, about the same height as the top of Mount Rainier. That's me now at 18.8, preparing my body. This is a mountain called Kalapatar. The climbing team climbs up to this peak to see how they're feeling. We're about a day away from base camp, and now for the first time we can see Mount Everest. That's actually wind blowing. That's not clouds, but it's actually the jet stream blowing snow off the north side of Everest. We have to wait for that jet stream to mysteriously move toward the end of April, early May, and that's all our preparations have to be ready to try to tag the top when that jet stream moves 200 miles to the north. On your way into base camp, these are memorials for people that have died trying to climb Everest. The bodies aren't there, the bodies are left on the mountain. The Himalaya in the back. So we've gone through the memorials, the trek is complete. That's one of our yaks. We love yaks. Yaks helping us carry tons of gear, mountaineering gear, to base camp. Their job's done, and now it will be the climbing team and the Sherpas that take the rest of the gear to the top. So there we are. We made it to base camp. So a Lama comes to base camp, and they bless every camp that's at Mount Everest Base Camp. So every team has a Lama come up. You can see the Lama there. That's me in the yellow coat. This is called a Puja Ceremony. Well, he will bless your camp. He likes to drink Tuborg Gold at 7 a.m. at about 20 below. They do heat the Tuborg, and he likes to have a drink with you. So the juniper bush that's at the base of our puja that holds our prayer flags that cover our camp, that flame will be kept lit by one of our Sherpas anytime a climber, us, Sherpas, any member of our team is on the upper mountain, 24/7, they'll keep that flame alive. When you take off for the upper mountain every time, you go left to right around the puja and say your prayers, whatever you'd like to say. And that's the top of our pujas. And those are our prayer flags with the west shoulder of Everest in the background. So our first bit of climbing is going to be up the Khumbu Icefall, a frozen river, about 2,000 feet of climbing. This frozen river moves 4 feet a day. I was in the icefall 8 times, and we never had the same route. That's about as high as a helicopter can fly. That was actually on a rescue. A Sherpa team had fallen in the icefall. So now we get going. We'll use ladders to cross the chunks of ice and the crevasses. And that's a good picture going straight up the icefall. The icefall is not always conducive to crossing. We have to fix these ladders and check them each time we go across the wide crevasses, which you can see. It's one of my favorite pictures. I don't know if you can see Greg is smiling there. He and I were climbing together. Where I am is on the other side of that crevasse, right about here. As he was crossing, the ladders that are tied together broke, and he was able to jump with an ice axe and make it to the other side. After about 2 hours of us fidgeting with ropes and trying to fix it, he looked across at me and he said, "Okay, try that." Those are my toes looking into the crevasse. People say, "How deep are the crevasses?" And the Sherpas will say, "We don't know, but we think if you fall in, you'll end up in America." So the journey, again, is not always as planned. That's an area that completely broke, and it took us about 5 hours to lash 6 ladders together to get down off the icefall. But we made it, Camp 1. Camp 2, up the western Khumbu, very crevasse laden, very hot climbing even though it's well below zero. And there's Camp 2. So Camp 2 is Advanced Base Camp. Those are our 4 climbing Sherpas. Advanced Base Camp will always have support and supplies, and one of our Sherpas will be there the entire 2.5 months that we're on the mountain. Okay, assess. Like, what's going on? How are we doing? We're over 20,000 feet. If you can see in this picture, they're looking up. And what they're looking at, everybody here, and they're on radios if you can see, they're looking at that. And that's the Lhotse face. That's something that we're going to have to climb up. What happened, see if we can get a pointer for you guys. Right here, a climber had fallen, high on the Lhotse face. And what happened, if you can see, everyone, there's a route that goes up. That's Camp 3, we're at Camp 2, where you're all sitting right now. We're going to go this way, across the Yellow Band, up this way, over the Geneva Spur. That's Lhotse. Everest is over here. A young climber had climbed Lhotse. He was coming down, right here, and he fell. How he stopped, nobody knows. But he fell, and he was in trouble. He's at about 25,000 feet in the death zone. He won't survive long, and so what we were doing at Camp 2 is trying to mobilize a rescue. There's people high on the mountain at Lhotse High Camp, and way over here is Everest High Camp. These people are resting. They're getting ready to go that night to accomplish their goal, their dream of climbing Lhotse, 4th highest peak in the world, or Everest, the highest peak in the world. Nobody would go get the kid. If you go on a rescue at these altitudes, your dream is over. You will be too exhausted if you're successful, if you survive it, and you would have to go down. Couldn't get anybody mobilized. We were hours, if not days away, and he wouldn't survive that. Even Camp 3 people below wouldn't survive it, right about here. Wouldn't get there in time. All of a sudden, over the radio, there was a crazy Italian climber named Simone. And Simone was going to climb Lhotse that night, come back down, go all the way back down to base camp, get some rest for a few days, and then climb Everest up the south side and descend into China on the north through Tibet. It had never been done before. He was very enthusiastic. And we all said, "Simone, it's never been done before because it's illegal and you'll be arrested." And he would just laugh. All of a sudden, Simone came on the radio. He's at Lhotse High Camp, remember? And he said, "Do not worry, I will get him." So we see a black dot emerge from his tent high at the Lhotse High Camp. You remember what I said about fixed ropes? We fix the ropes for our protection. We clip into those ropes. The rope goes here and around this turtle over here, you guys. That's just, it goes around it. See, you might be able to see the line. That's where the fixed rope is. Simone, the black dot, disappeared into the turtle, which is just jagged, ugly rock and ice. If he so much as stubbed his toe and fell, he'd go by us in seconds to his death. It was the quickest way for him to get to that kid. A couple hours later, we see a dot emerge close to the climber. So we get on the radio. We said, Simone, how are you doing? And he said, well, I have risked my life, but I am fine. These are all verbatim quotes. A couple hours later, he gets to the climber, the two dots merge. We get on the radio. We say, Simone, it's excellent climbing. How is he? How are you? He goes, well, the boy has lost a crampon, but I will teach him to climb with one. In mountaineering, if you're in trouble, you're supposed to go down. He wanted to climb back to Lhotse High Camp because he was worried about avalanche. They are on a very treacherous slope. So they did it. They climbed. And now it's just about dark. We see the dots, get to the tents, get on the radio one last time, and we say, Simone, that was excellent. How are you? And he said, well, I would rather be with the two girls that I met in Lukla, but I'm fine. So that's the fallen climber on his way down. Now we're on the Lhotse face. That's how steep it was. That's how we don't know how that kid stopped, but it was kind of a miracle. And a miracle that Simone changed his plans and his goals on the spot and saved a life. So we're at Camp 3, very inhabitable, or whatever the name. It's a bad spot. So now we're going to Camp 4. Unfortunately, I just have a couple left. We're almost to the top, everybody. Camp 4, high camp. That's what you want it to look like if you're going to climb Mount Everest. That's looking at the south summit of Mount Everest. We're in great position. Our team leader, Greg, decided we would wait a day. He felt some of the team members would benefit from a rest day, which is an oxymoron because at 26,000 feet, you're dying. You can't rest. But that was the decision, and we went with the team leader. The next day, that picture looked like that. Got to assess. Very bad weather. Very close to the end of the season. Phil Urschler and everyone except Greg and myself reassessed, and they said, it's not our day. We're going down. Greg and I decided to work together, assess our situation every 20 minutes, and determine whether or not we should proceed. You're not thinking very logically then, so it was probably a silly idea to begin with, but we did make it. And so off we went through the darkness, shadow of Everest, South Summit, where the people are huddled. Now we have to go across the Hillary Step, which is there. And that's the summit of Everest. So you celebrate briefly, and then you get out of there. It's time to go home. Helicopter, by far the most frightening part of this journey. And that was the top. And so that was the completion of my goal. Enjoyed the 8 years. I certainly have applied it to business, and I thank you guys for having me.